There is a silent rule in the world of extreme luxury. The people who clean up your messes are invisible. But what happens when the man mopping the floor of the VIP lounge is actually the billionaire who signs the paychecks for the entire airport? When a snobby first-class crew and an arrogant hedge-fund manager humiliated a quiet, grey-haired janitor at Gate A15, they thought they were just putting a nobody in his place. They had no idea they had just insulted the owner of the terminal. Here is the story. The Pacific Concourse at Los Angeles International Airport was a marvel of modern architecture, a sweeping cathedral of glass and steel that had recently undergone a $2.4 billion renovation. It was designed to cater to the ultra-wealthy, featuring private screening lanes, biometric boarding, and VIP lounges that rivaled five-star hotels. What the millions of passengers who passed through its gates didn't know was that this specific concourse was no longer entirely public. Through a complex public-private partnership, a private equity firm called Horizon Infrastructure Partners had secured a 99-year lease to operate, manage, and profit from the terminal. And the majority shareholder of Horizon Infrastructure Partners was a 58-year-old black man named Scarlett Miller. Scarlett was a man who believed in the ground floor. He had started his career 35 years ago as a baggage handler for Pan Am in the grueling heat of Miami. Through relentless grit, shrewd investments in logistics, and an unmatched understanding of supply chain infrastructure, he had built an empire. Yet, despite his net worth hovering around $1.8 billion, Scarlett despised the ivory tower. Once a month, without telling his executive board or the local media, he would don the grey industrial uniform of the terminal's contracted janitorial staff. He would take a mop, a radio, and a trash cart, and spend 6 hours working the floors of his own empire. For Scarlett, it was the only way to get the truth. Spreadsheets and quarterly earnings reports couldn't tell him if the bathrooms were actually clean, if the security lines were moving efficiently, or if the staff was treating passengers with dignity. The uniform was the ultimate invisibility cloak. In the eyes of the world, a grey-haired black man in a janitor's jumpsuit wasn't a billionaire. He was a fixture, a ghost, a piece of the machinery to be ignored. It was a Tuesday evening, just past 8 p.m. The terminal was humming with the low, sophisticated murmur of international departures. At Gate 15, the flagship transatlantic carrier, Royal Sovereign Airways, was preparing to board its premium heavy Boeing 777 to London Heathrow. The first-class boarding lane, cordoned off by thick velvet ropes and illuminated by soft LED floor lighting, was pristine, except for a massive puddle of iced caramel latte that a rushing teenager had dropped 5 minutes prior. Scarlett had seen the spill on his rounds and immediately unclipped his radio. But rather than calling it in for a subordinate to handle, he wheeled his yellow mop bucket over to the gate himself. He set up the bright yellow caution, wet floor signs in a perfect triangle, blocking off the hazard, and began to work the mop with the practiced rhythmic strokes he hadn't forgotten from his 20s. A few feet away stood Chloe Harrington, the lead purser and chief flight attendant for Royal Sovereign's first-class cabin. Chloe was striking, impeccably groomed with a tight French twist, a tailored navy blue uniform, and a silk scarf tied perfectly at her neck. She was also notoriously difficult. In the tight-knit world of international aviation, Chloe was known for her obsession with status. She fawned over celebrities and executives, but treated ground crew and junior flight attendants with open disdain. "Excuse me," Chloe snapped, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the terminal. She marched over to the edge of the velvet rope, glaring down at Scarlett. "You can't do that right now. We are about to commence first-class boarding in exactly 4 minutes. You're ruining the aesthetic of the priority lane." Scarlett paused, resting his calloused hands on the handle of the mop. He looked up, his expression mild and accommodating. "Good evening, ma'am. Just trying to get this spill cleaned up before your passengers start walking through it. It's sticky, and the tile gets dangerously slick when it's wet." "It's an eyesore," Chloe retorted, gesturing dismissively at his yellow bucket. "Look at you. You're right in the middle of the red carpet area. Roll that filthy cart away. You can come back and clean whatever is left after my priority passengers have boarded." "If I leave this here," Scarlett said calmly, keeping his tone respectful, "someone is going to slip. I just need 2 more minutes to dry mop it." Before Chloe could escalate further, a loud, exasperated sigh echoed from behind her. Approaching the gate was Kevin Caldwell. Kevin was a managing partner at a boutique hedge fund in Manhattan, a man who wore his wealth like a weapon. He was dressed in a bespoke Tom Ford suit, carrying a $4,000 Goyard briefcase, and his feet were clad in freshly polished Berluti leather loafers. Kevin was a frequent flyer on this route, and he demanded nothing short of absolute subservience from the world around him. "Chloe, darling, what is the hold-up?" Kevin asked, ignoring Scarlett entirely. He bypassed the economy line, stepping directly toward the priority lane. "Mr. Caldwell, it's so wonderful to have you flying with us again." Chloe's entire demeanor shifted instantly. Her face broke into a radiant, manufactured smile. "No hold-up at all, sir. The gate agents are just finalizing the paperwork. We'll have you in seat 1A with a glass of Dom Perignon in just a moment." "Good, because I've been on conference calls all day and I have 0 patience left," Kevin said, stepping forward. "Sir, careful," Scarlett warned, raising a hand. "The floor right there is very wet." Kevin didn't even look down. He scoffed, stepping right over the yellow caution sign, completely ignoring the warning. His foot landed squarely in the remnants of the sticky latte puddle. His leather sole caught the slick liquid, and for a terrifying second, his arms flailed as he lost his balance. He managed to catch himself on the aluminum stanchion of the velvet rope, avoiding a fall. But the sudden jerk caused his Goyard briefcase to swing wildly, smashing directly into Scarlett's mop bucket. The bucket tipped. A tidal wave of grey, soapy mop water surged across the polished concourse floor, splashing directly onto Kevin's immaculate Berluti loafers and the cuffs of his tailored trousers. Silence fell over gate A15. Scarlett froze, staring at the spreading puddle. He hadn't caused it. The passenger had literally kicked the bucket over, but he knew exactly how this script played out in the real world. Kevin Caldwell looked down at his ruined shoes. His face slowly turned a dangerous shade of crimson. When he looked up, his eyes locked onto Scarlett, burning with a furious, unhinged entitlement. The invisible man had just become the center of a very visible storm. "Are you completely out of your mind?" Kevin's voice boomed across the gate area, loud enough to turn the heads of at least 50 passengers sitting in the nearby waiting area. "Do you have any idea what you just did, you incompetent fool?" Scarlett instinctively took a step back, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "Sir, I apologize for the mess, but I did warn you to watch your step. The caution sign—" "Don't you dare talk back to me," Kevin snarled, stepping into Scarlett's personal space. The height difference wasn't much, but Kevin was practically vibrating with rage. He pointed a trembling finger at his shoes. "These are $1,200 shoes. This suit is custom wool. You just ruined a $5,000 outfit with your filthy toilet water because you don't know how to keep your trash out of the way." Chloe Harrington, seeing her most valuable passenger in distress, immediately rushed to his side. Instead of trying to calm Kevin down or de-escalate the very public scene, she turned her wrath entirely on Scarlett. "I told you to move," Chloe hissed, her perfectly manicured finger pointing directly at Scarlett's chest. "I specifically instructed you to clear this area 5 minutes ago. Your blatant insubordination just assaulted one of our highest-tier passengers." Scarlett maintained his composure. Inside, a quiet, analytical part of his brain was taking notes. Royal Sovereign Airways, he thought. Contract renewal for terminal gates is up in 8 months. Their lead crew demonstrates zero crisis management and active hostility toward ground staff. Noted. Ma'am, with all due respect, I was doing my job to prevent a safety hazard, Scarlett replied, his voice remaining remarkably steady, a stark contrast to the hysteria in front of him. The gentleman knocked over the bucket. "Are you calling me a liar?" Kevin shouted, his face inches from Scarlett's. "You put that trap right where you knew I was walking. What is wrong with you people? Do you resent anyone who actually makes something of their life? Is that it? You're stuck pushing a mop in your 50s, so you try to ruin it for the rest of us." The ugliness of the comment hung in the air. A few passengers in the economy line murmured, some looking uncomfortable, a few pulling out their smartphones to record the altercation. "Sir, there is no need for personal insults," Scarlett said, his tone dropping an octave, carrying a subtle, commanding weight that momentarily caught Kevin off guard. It was the voice of a CEO used to dominating boardrooms, not a janitor begging for his job. But Kevin Caldwell was not a man who registered subtleties. "I will insult whoever I please when they damage my property. What's your name? I want your badge number right now." Chloe turned to the nearby gate podium, where 2 airline agents were watching in stunned silence. "Call terminal operations," she barked at them. "Get security down here immediately. I want this man removed from our gate, and I want him fired before this flight takes off." "Chloe, I want compensation," Kevin demanded, pulling out a silk handkerchief to furiously dab at his wet trousers. "I want this contracting company to pay for these shoes, and I want it in writing tonight." "Absolutely, Mr. Caldwell," Chloe soothed, glaring at Scarlett as if he were a cockroach on the marble floor. "We will have terminal management handle him. This is completely unacceptable. These third-party contractors have zero training and zero respect for the elite clientele we bring to this airport." Scarlett simply stood there, his hands clasped casually in front of his waist. He watched as the airline's ground agent scrambled to pick up the red emergency phone. He watched Chloe coddle a grown man throwing a temper tantrum. He observed the blatant classism, the visceral disgust they held for someone they perceived as working class. Third-party contractors, Scarlett thought with a grim irony. She doesn't even know how the airport functions. Horizon Infrastructure Partners didn't just lease the terminal. They had recently absorbed the ground services company. The janitors, the security, the maintenance crews, they were all direct employees of Scarlett's parent company now. He had initiated the buyout specifically to increase their wages and provide them with full healthcare benefits, something the previous operators had refused to do. He knew exactly how hard the men and women in these grey uniforms worked. To see them spoken to this way made a cold, hard anger settle in his chest. "You're not going to say anything?" Kevin taunted, noticing Scarlett's silence. "Nothing to say now that your job is on the line. Maybe you'll learn to stay out of the way of people who actually matter." "I am waiting," Scarlett said quietly, "for security to arrive, as you requested." "Smug old man," Chloe muttered under her breath, crossing her arms. "We'll see how smug you are when they strip your badge," Within 3 minutes, the heavy double doors at the end of the concourse swung open. 2 airport security officers in crisp white shirts and black tactical vests power-walked toward Gate A15. Behind them, jogging to keep up, was Derek Fisher. Derek was the night shift gate operations supervisor for Terminal 4. He was 32, ambitious, and deeply anxious. He wore a sharp blazer with the Horizon Infrastructure logo pinned to his lapel. Derek's entire job depended on keeping the airlines happy and ensuring the terminal's elite passengers had a frictionless experience. He had a reputation for being a relentless micromanager who always threw the bottom-rung employees under the bus to appease the higher-ups. As Derek approached the scene, the spilled water, the angry VIP, the glaring flight attendant, and the silent janitor, his face went pale. He immediately recognized Kevin Caldwell from the VIP logs. "Mr. Caldwell, Miss Harrington, I am so sorry," Derek gasped, practically bowing as he approached the velvet ropes. "What happened here? Are you all right?" "No, I am not all right, Derek," Kevin snapped, recognizing the supervisor. "Your janitor here intentionally blocked the priority boarding lane and assaulted me with his mop cart. My suit is ruined. My shoes are destroyed." Derek's eyes darted to Scarlett. Because Scarlett only did these undercover shifts once a month, and the terminal employed over 400 maintenance workers, Derek had absolutely no idea who he was looking at. He just saw a grey uniform, a spilled bucket, and a PR disaster waiting to happen. "I am incredibly sorry, Mr. Caldwell," Derek said, his voice trembling slightly. He turned to Scarlett, his expression shifting from apologetic to sheer venom. "What is wrong with you? Were you not trained on boundary protocols during VIP boarding?" "I was cleaning a spill so no one would slip, Mr. Fisher," Scarlett said, reading Derek's name tag. "The passenger disregarded the safety sign and knocked the bucket over." "Don't you dare blame the passenger!" Derek shouted, desperate to perform his authority for Kevin and Chloe. "Mr. Caldwell is a Platinum Elite member of this airport. You do not speak to him, you do not look at him, and you certainly don't argue with him. Hand over your badge." Scarlett raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "Your security clearance badge. Hand it over right now," Derek demanded, snapping his fingers. "You are suspended pending an investigation, which means you are fired. I will not have my terminal's reputation dragged through the mud by careless contractors. Officer Davies," Derek gestured to the lead security guard, "confiscate his credentials and escort him off the property." Officer Davies, a burly man with a shaved head, stepped forward, resting a hand heavily on his utility belt. "Come on, buddy. Let's make this easy. Hand over the card and let's take a walk." The atmosphere at Gate A15 was thick with tension. The ambient chatter of the terminal had completely died down in the immediate vicinity. Dozens of passengers were now openly watching, the glowing screens of their phones recording the public execution of a working-class man's livelihood. Scarlett stood his ground. He did not reach for his lanyard. He did not break eye contact with Derek Fisher. "Mr. Fisher," Scarlett said, his voice steady, carrying the precise, terrifying calm of a predator assessing its prey. "Are you terminating an employee without reviewing the security footage? Without taking an incident report from both parties? Is this the standard operating procedure for Horizon Infrastructure partners?" Derek blinked, slightly thrown by the janitor's articulate pushback and use of the parent company's name. But the hesitation only lasted a second before his arrogance took over. "I don't need to review footage to see that you dumped water on a VIP." Derek spat, his face flushing. "You are a cleaner. You are entirely replaceable. Mr. Caldwell brings hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue to this airline and this terminal. Now take off the badge, or I will have Officer Davies arrest you for trespassing." "Arrest him," Chloe chimed in, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. "He's being hostile. This is exactly the kind of unvetted trash you people hire. I'm noting all of this in my report to Royal Sovereign's corporate office. We pay millions for these gate leases, Derek. We expect a secure, premium environment." "And you have it, Chloe. I swear to you," Derek pleaded, practically groveling. He turned to Officer Davies. "Restrain him. Get him out of my sight." Officer Davies stepped forward, reaching out to grab Scarlett by the bicep. Before the guard's fingers could even brush the grey fabric of his uniform, Scarlett took a half-step back and raised his left hand. It was a subtle gesture, but it was executed with such absolute, unquestionable authority that Davies froze in his tracks. "Do not touch me," Scarlett said. The volume of his voice didn't rise, but the weight of it seemed to double. He slowly reached into the deep front pocket of his grey jumpsuit. For a split second, Officer Davies tensed, his hand dropping closer to his radio. But Scarlett didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a sleek, jet-black titanium smartphone, a device that cost more than Derek Fisher's monthly salary. Kevin Caldwell scoffed loudly. "Oh, look. The janitor has a better phone than you do, Derek. Probably stole it out of the lost and found. Are you going to call your union rep?" "Go ahead. Tell them Kevin Caldwell got you fired. I want them to know my name." Scarlett ignored the hedge fund manager entirely. He unlocked the screen with his thumbprint and dialed a number. He put the phone to his ear, his eyes slowly panning across the faces of the people condemning him. He looked at Chloe's smug satisfaction. He looked at Kevin's sneering entitlement. He looked at Derek's cowardly desperation. The phone rang twice before it was answered. "Sarah," Scarlett said. On the other end of the line was Sarah Jenkins, the Executive Vice President of Operations for Horizon Infrastructure Partners. She was currently sitting in a glass-walled office on the top floor of the terminal's administrative tower, looking over a stack of vendor contracts. "Mr. Miller?" Sarah's voice came through crisp and professional. She was one of the 3 people in the entire airport who knew about his undercover shifts. "Is everything all right? Your GPS tracker shows you've been stationary at Gate A15 for nearly 20 minutes. Everything is highly illuminating, Sarah," Scarlett replied, his eyes locked dead onto Derek Fisher. Derek frowned, trying to figure out who the old man could possibly be talking to with such an authoritative tone. "I need you to come down to Gate A15 immediately," Scarlett continued. "Bring the master employment roster, the Royal Sovereign Airways lease agreement, and the legal compliance team." There was a brief pause on the line. Then Sarah's voice dropped into a deadly serious register. "Who messed up, Scarlett? We are currently dealing with a severe failure in management protocol, a breach of our vendor code of conduct, and a supervisor who is attempting to authorize a false arrest to appease a belligerent passenger." Derek let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "Who are you talking to? Are you pretending to be a lawyer now? You're a janitor. Hang up the phone and give me your badge." Scarlett didn't blink. He spoke directly into the receiver. "Sarah, also contact airport police. I want the chief of Port Authority down here. Not terminal security. The actual police." "Understood, Mr. Miller. I'm leaving my office right now. I will be at the gate in 4 minutes," Sarah said, the line clicking dead. Scarlett slowly lowered the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. He looked at the 4 people surrounding him. The dynamic in the circle had subtly shifted. While Chloe and Kevin still looked incredibly smug, Derek Fisher's stomach had suddenly tied itself into a knot. There was something deeply unsettling about the way this old man carried himself. The jargon he used, management protocol, vendor code of conduct, lease agreements, that wasn't the vocabulary of a contracted floor cleaner. "What kind of stunt are you pulling?" Kevin demanded, stepping forward again, though this time he was careful not to step in the remaining water. "Do you think making a fake phone call is going to save your job? I'll have you blacklisted from every employment agency in this city." "Mr. Caldwell," Scarlett said, addressing the billionaire passenger for the first time by name, his voice dripping with icy precision. "You are a managing partner at Vanguard Capital, correct?" Kevin stopped dead. His eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" "Because your firm attempted to participate in the mezzanine financing round when this terminal was privatized last year," Scarlett stated calmly. "You offered $75 million for a minority stake. Your firm was rejected." The color drained from Kevin Caldwell's face. Chloe Harrington looked back and forth between the passenger and the janitor, her perfect composure beginning to crack with confusion. How could a man, pushing a mop, possibly know the details of a multi-million-dollar private equity deal? Derek Fisher felt a cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. His mind raced frantically. "Who is this guy?" "You," Kevin stammered, his arrogance momentarily short-circuiting. "Who told you that? Did you read that in the Wall Street Journal or something?" Scarlett didn't answer him. Instead, he reached up to his chest and unclipped the generic yellow contractor badge from his lapel. He tossed it casually onto the polished floor, right next to the puddle of dirty water. Then, he reached into the collar of his jumpsuit, unzipped it halfway, and pulled out a heavy, matte black ID card that hung on a reinforced steel lanyard around his neck. It wasn't a standard airport badge. It didn't have the color-coded security zones that normal employees had. It was a solid black card, stamped with the gold seal of the Department of Homeland Security and the crest of the Port Authority. At the very top, printed in bold, unmistakable silver letters, was the title: Executive Chairman and Majority Owner, Horizon Infrastructure Partners. Scarlett held the badge out so Derek Fisher could read it. Derek stared at the card. He read the name: Scarlett Miller. He had seen that name on every paycheck, every company-wide memo, every plaque in the corporate offices. It was the name of the billionaire who had bought the terminal. Derek's knees literally buckled. He let out a sound that was half gasp, half whimper, stumbling backward as if the badge were radioactive. "I believe you asked for my badge, Mr. Fisher," Scarlett said, his voice echoing like thunder in the suddenly silent terminal. "Do you still want to confiscate it?" Derek Fisher stared at the solid black identification card as if it were a loaded gun pointed directly between his eyes. The gold seal of the Port Authority seemed to catch the harsh fluorescent lights of the concourse, blinding him to his reality. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish pulled out of the Pacific. The name Scarlett Miller echoed in his skull. This was the man who had bought the terminal for $2 billion. This was the man who signed Derek's paychecks. And Derek had just ordered him to be thrown out of the building. Mr. Miller," Derek finally choked out, his voice a pathetic, reedy whisper. The arrogant swagger of the terminal supervisor had vanished entirely, replaced by the trembling posture of a man who realized he had just destroyed his own career. I didn't know. Sir, you have to understand. I had no idea it was you." "That is precisely the problem, Derek," Scarlett said, his voice devoid of anger, which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. "You didn't know it was me. You thought I was just a man making $15 an hour. You thought I was someone who couldn't fight back. And because you thought I was powerless, you decided I was worthless. Chloe Harrington, still clutching her clipboard, looked back and forth between the two men. The perfectly constructed bubble of her reality was beginning to fracture, but her ego refused to let it pop. "Derek, what is going on?" Chloe demanded, her voice sharp with impatience. "Why are you stuttering? I don't care if he stole some executive's badge. I want him removed. We are delaying a transatlantic flight." Before Derek could even attempt to silence the flight attendant, the heavy glass doors of the terminal's administrative elevator bank slid open. The rhythmic, synchronized sound of purposeful footsteps echoed down the polished concourse. The crowd of passengers, still recording on their iPhones and Samsungs, parted like the Red Sea. Striding down the center of the concourse was Sarah Jenkins, a formidable woman in a sharply tailored charcoal suit, clutching a thick leather portfolio. Flanking her were two corporate attorneys in matching navy suits. But it was the men trailing them that made the air in the terminal freeze. Walking briskly behind the executives was Chief of Port Authority Police, Thomas Evans, accompanied by 4 heavily armed, uniformed officers. Chloe's confident sneer faltered. Kevin Caldwell, the belligerent hedge-fund manager, took a mechanical step backward, his ruined Berluti loafers squeaking awkwardly against the tile. Sarah Jenkins bypassed the velvet ropes, bypassed the stunned flight crew, and walked directly up to the man in the damp grey janitor's uniform. She did not look at his clothes. She looked him in the eye. "Mr. Chairman," Sarah said, her voice projecting crisp authority across the silent gate. She handed him the leather portfolio. "I have the Royal Sovereign lease agreements, the employee master roster, and the terminal's code of vendor conduct, as requested." Chief Evans stepped forward next, extending a hand to Scarlett. "Evening, Scarlett. We got your call. Who's causing the disturbance on your property?" "Your property." The words hit the crowd like a shockwave. A collective gasp rippled through the hundreds of passengers gathered around Gate A15. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "He owns the airport. The janitor owns the terminal." Chloe Harrington actually stumbled, her manicured hand catching the podium to keep herself upright. Her face drained of all color, transforming her pristine makeup into a pale, chalky mask. The unvetted trash she had just threatened to have fired and arrested was the landlord of her airline's most lucrative global hub. Kevin Caldwell's jaw clenched so tight it looked as though his teeth might shatter. The puzzle pieces violently snapped together in his mind. The subtle authority, the knowledge of Vanguard Capital's failed $75 million bid, it all made sense. He hadn't just insulted a worker, he had assaulted a billionaire titan of industry who wielded more raw capital than Kevin's entire Manhattan firm. Scarlett turned his attention back to Derek, who was now sweating profusely, his chest heaving with panic. "Derek, do you know why I do this?" Scarlett asked quietly, gesturing to his grey uniform. "I do it because a company is only as good as its foundation. If the floor is dirty, the foundation is cracking. Today I found a crack. You bypassed standard operating procedure, you refused to review security footage, and you attempted to use private security as a weapon against a subordinate to appease a wealthy bully." "Mr. Miller, please," Derek begged, actual tears brimming in the corners of his eyes. "I was just trying to protect the terminal's relationship with Royal Sovereign. I have a mortgage, sir. I have a family. I'll apologize. I'll do whatever you want. You already showed me what you do when you think nobody of consequence is watching," Scarlett replied, his tone final and absolute. "Sarah, process Mr. Fisher's termination immediately. Cause, gross misconduct and violation of our employee protection protocols. He is banned from holding any supervisory role in any facility operated by Horizon Infrastructure. Sarah nodded, pulling a pen from her jacket. Understood, Mr. Chairman. Hand over your blazer, your radio, and your security clearance, Derek, Scarlett ordered. Officer Davies will escort you to your locker to collect your personal effects, and then you will be escorted off my property. Derek let out a defeated sob. His shaking hands fumbled with the lapels of his blazer. He stripped it off, dumped his radio on the gate podium, and handed his badge to the very security guard he had ordered to arrest Scarlett just 10 minutes prior. Without another word, a ruined man, Derek was led away down the concourse, the flash of smartphone cameras capturing his humiliating exit. With the first head rolling, the atmosphere at the gate grew suffocatingly tight. Scarlett Miller turned slowly, his eyes locking onto the man in the ruined Tom Ford suit. Kevin Caldwell was a man accustomed to buying his way out of consequences. In his world of high-frequency trading and Amex Centurion cards, money was a shield that deflected all accountability. But as he looked at Scarlett Miller, he realized with a sickening dread that his shield was useless here. Mr. Caldwell, Scarlett began, his voice perfectly measured. You seem to be under the impression that your wealth grants you immunity from basic human decency. Kevin puffed out his chest, trying to muster the bullish aggression that won him boardroom battles in New York. Listen, Miller, we got off on the wrong foot. Let's be professionals here. I had a long day. I lost my temper. It happens. I'll write a check for the cleaning staff's holiday fund right now. $10,000. We call it water under the bridge, and I get on my flight. Scarlett didn't blink. You kicked a bucket of contaminated water onto a worker, demanded his termination, and insulted his livelihood. You don't get to buy a clean conscience for $10,000. I am a Platinum Elite member of the One World Alliance, Kevin snapped, his voice rising in defensive panic. I fly 300,000 miles a year. You cannot treat me like some common criminal. If you try to delay me further, I will call Arthur Pendleton, the CEO of Royal Sovereign, and have him deal with you directly. Scarlett reached into his pocket and pulled out his titanium smartphone. He unlocked it and held it out toward Kevin. Arthur is in London right now. It's about 4 a.m. there. But he usually answers my calls, Scarlett said, his eyes hard and unyielding. Would you like to wake him up and tell him you assaulted the landlord of his flagship terminal? Or would you prefer I do it? Kevin stared at the phone. The bluff was called. Arthur Pendleton relied on Horizon Infrastructure to keep his landing fees competitive. The airline CEO would throw Kevin out of an airplane mid-flight if it meant keeping Scarlett Miller happy. What do you want? Kevin hissed through his teeth, his arrogance finally giving way to genuine fear. I want you out of my terminal, Scarlett said simply. You can't do that. I have a first-class ticket on this flight. You have a ticket to board an aircraft, Scarlett corrected him, stepping closer. But to reach that aircraft, you have to walk across my floor. And as the majority owner of this facility, I reserve the right to refuse entry to individuals who pose a threat to my staff. You, Mr. Caldwell, are a hostile presence. Scarlett turned to Chief Evans. Chief, Mr. Caldwell is officially trespassing on Horizon Infrastructure property. He is to be permanently blacklisted from all concourses, lounges and facilities managed by our firm worldwide. Escort him to the curb. You're making a massive mistake, Miller, Kevin shouted, his face contorting with rage as 2 Port Authority officers flanked him. You're going to hear from my lawyers. I'll sue this terminal into the ground. I have a legal team of 80 corporate attorneys who would love the overtime, Scarlett replied coolly. Have a safe drive back to Manhattan, Kevin. I hear the traffic on the 405 is terrible tonight. The crowd erupted into applause. It started as a smattering of claps from the economy line, and quickly swelled into a roaring ovation. Ordinary people who had watched entitled elites step on service workers their entire lives were witnessing a masterclass in karma. Kevin Caldwell's face burned with absolute, undiluted humiliation. Flanked by armed police, the millionaire hedge fund manager was marched away from the velvet ropes, his ruined Berluti shoes leaving a faint trail of squeaks down the marble floor. As the applause died down, a heavy, terrifying silence fell over the remaining antagonist. Chloe Harrington was trapped. The chief flight attendant, who had so gleefully weaponized her status against a janitor, was now standing completely alone. Her terminal manager was fired. Her VIP passenger was banned and escorted out by the police. And the man she had called unvetted trash was currently holding the master lease for her airline's gate. Scarlett slowly turned his gaze to Chloe. She flinched. For the first time in her 15-year career, Chloe was completely paralyzed. She couldn't deploy a fake, radiant smile. She couldn't throw a subordinate in the line of fire. She was exposed. "Miss Harrington," Scarlett said, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet volume. "Mr. Miller." "Sir, Chloe stammered, her hands shaking so violently the metal clip on her boarding manifest rattled. "I was just following protocol. We have a strict schedule. The spill was a hazard to our elite clientele. I didn't mean any disrespect to you personally." "You didn't mean any disrespect to me personally because you didn't know I was a billionaire," Scarlett corrected her, his words sharp as a scalpel. "But you meant every ounce of disrespect to the uniform I am wearing. You looked at a man trying to keep your passengers safe, and you saw dirt." "Please," Chloe whispered, her eyes darting to the passengers who were watching her every move. "Please, we have 300 passengers waiting to board. We have a flight path to maintain." Scarlett opened the leather portfolio Sarah had handed him. He flipped through the thick stack of legal documents until he found the page he was looking for. Royal Sovereign Airways pays Horizon Infrastructure $42 million a year for the exclusive use of gates A10 through A20, Scarlett read aloud, his eyes scanning the contract. Section 4, Paragraph 12. The lessee agrees that all airline personnel will adhere to a code of mutual respect and non-discrimination toward all terminal staff, contractors, and vendors. Gross violation of this conduct clause may result in the immediate suspension of gate privileges. He closed the portfolio with a sharp snap that made Chloe jump. "Do not board this aircraft, Miss Harrington," Scarlett commanded. "Sarah, patch me through to the ground control tower. Tell them to hold Royal Sovereign Flight 88 from pushback, and send someone down that jet bridge right now. I want the captain of this aircraft out here. Immediately." The heavy metal door of the jet bridge clicked, the sound unnervingly loud in the hushed gate area. Out stepped Captain William Bradford. A veteran pilot with 30 years of commercial aviation experience, Bradford was an imposing figure. He wore his 4 gold shoulder stripes with the quiet dignity of a man who routinely carried 300 souls across the Atlantic. He had expected to see a mechanical failure or a medical emergency. Instead, he walked into a scene that defied all aviation logic. A silent, staring crowd of passengers, his chief flight attendant shaking like a leaf, heavily armed Port Authority police standing by, and a man in a damp janitor's uniform holding a portfolio of corporate lease agreements. "What is the meaning of this?" Captain Bradford asked, his deep baritone cutting through the tension. "Tower just issued a hard ground stop for my aircraft. We are burning our departure window. Chloe, what is happening here? Chloe swallowed hard. Her throat was incredibly dry, and her perfectly practiced social mask had completely melted away. Captain Bradford, There was an incident with a passenger and a contractor. It got out of hand. I was trying to manage the boarding process, but she was attempting to manage the boarding process by facilitating the abuse of my ground staff. Scarlett interrupted, his voice calm, but ringing with absolute authority. Captain Bradford turned to the grey-haired man in the jumpsuit. His eyes flicked down to the heavy black security card resting against the man's chest. Bradford was not a terminal manager, nor a corporate executive, but he had been flying out of this hub long enough to recognize the seal of the board of directors. "I apologize, sir," Bradford said cautiously, his posture straightening. "And you are?" "Scarlett Miller," he replied, "Executive Chairman of Horizon Infrastructure Partners. I own the master lease on this terminal, Captain Bradford, including the very tiles you are standing on." Bradford's eyes widened a fraction of an inch, but he maintained his professional composure. "Mr. Miller, it is a privilege, though I wish the circumstances were better. Please, tell me why my aircraft has been grounded." 5 minutes ago, one of your first-class passengers violently kicked a bucket of contaminated water onto me while I was securing a spill, Scarlett explained, gesturing to the yellow caution signs and the puddle. "Instead of de-escalating the situation, your chief flight attendant aggressively defended the passenger, insulted my intelligence, referred to my staff as unvetted trash, and demanded my immediate termination and arrest." Bradford slowly turned his gaze to Chloe. The disappointment in the veteran pilot's eyes was crushing. "Captain, he was blocking the priority lane," Chloe pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. She stepped toward Bradford, seeking an ally. "Mr. Caldwell was furious. I had to protect our elite revenue stream. This man is look at him. How was I supposed to know he was the owner?" A man in the front row of the economy line, a software engineer named Jonathan, wearing a simple hoodie and carrying a backpack, spoke up. "She's lying, Captain. The janitor, Mr. Miller, was just trying to keep the floor safe. The rich guy in the suit attacked him, and this flight attendant basically cheered him on. We all have it on video." Jonathan held up his smartphone. Several other passengers nodded in agreement, murmuring their assent. Captain Bradford didn't need to see the video. He had flown with Chloe Harrington for 3 years. He knew exactly how she treated the junior catering staff and the baggage handlers when she thought nobody important was watching. The terminal's owner had simply caught her in the act. "Mr. Miller," Bradford said, turning back to Scarlett, "Royal Sovereign Airways relies heavily on the hard work of your ground crews. I personally rely on them to fuel my jet, load my cargo, and keep this facility safe. What happened here is unacceptable, and it does not reflect the values of my flight deck." "I am glad to hear that, Captain," Scarlett said. "But words do not secure contracts. Section 4 of your airline's lease strictly prohibits the harassment of terminal vendors. I am fully prepared to revoke Royal Sovereign's gate privileges at this hub. You can park your 777s on the tarmac, in the desert for all I care. I will not have my people treated like garbage." The threat hung in the air, heavy and lethal. Revoking the gate privileges would cost the airline hundreds of millions of dollars and ignite a catastrophic logistics nightmare. "That will not be necessary, Mr. Chairman," Bradford said firmly. He turned to Chloe, his face carved from stone. "Ms. Harrington, gather your personal belongings." "Captain?" Chloe gasped, her eyes welling with panicked tears. "You can't do this. I'm the lead purser for this route." "You are a liability to this airline, Chloe," Bradford stated, his voice completely devoid of sympathy. "You do not respect the people who make our jobs possible. You just risked a $40 million gate lease because you wanted to play favorites with a bully. You are officially relieved of duty, effective immediately. Step away from the podium." "Please," Chloe sobbed, the reality of her shattered career finally crashing down upon her. The glamorous life of international layovers, five-star hotels, and first-class prestige was evaporating before her eyes. "Please, Captain Bradford, Mr. Miller, I am so sorry. I'll apologize to the whole staff. I'll do anything." "The time for apologies was before you tried to ruin a working man's life to protect a pair of expensive shoes," Scarlett said softly. Bradford gestured to the terminal doors. "Hand over your flight manifest to the junior purser, Chloe, then go home. Corporate will contact you in the morning regarding your termination." Stripped of her power, her pride, and her career, Chloe Harrington unclipped her silver wings from her tailored lapel. With trembling hands, she set them on the boarding podium. She did not look at the passengers. She did not look at her captain. And she certainly could not bring herself to look at Scarlett Miller. Head bowed, she dragged her rolling suitcase away from Gate A-15, walking the long, humiliating walk of shame down the concourse she had once treated as her personal kingdom. The gate was quiet again, but the heavy, toxic tension had lifted. It was replaced by an electric sense of awe. Captain Bradford picked up the flight manifest from the podium and handed it to a young, wide-eyed junior flight attendant who had just rushed up from the jet bridge. "Mr. Miller," Bradford said, extending his hand. "On behalf of Royal Sovereign Airways, I sincerely apologize. I will personally ensure that a full report is filed with our CEO, Arthur Pendleton, detailing the misconduct of our former purser and the passenger." Scarlett took the captain's hand, his grip firm and respectful. "Have a safe flight to Heathrow, Captain Bradford. Your airline's lease remains secure." "Thank you, sir. Let's get these people boarded," Bradford said, giving a reassuring nod to the passengers before disappearing back down the jet bridge. Sarah Jenkins, the executive vice president, stepped forward. She looked at the puddle of soapy, grey water that still stained the marble floor, and then at the chairman of the board. "I'll call down to maintenance, Mr. Miller," Sarah said, reaching for her radio. "We'll get a crew up here to clean this up immediately, so the passengers can board safely." "No need, Sarah," Scarlett replied quietly. To the absolute astonishment of everyone remaining at the gate, the billionaire executive chairman walked over to the overturned yellow bucket. He righted it, picked up the mop with his calloused hands, and wrung out the sponge. "Sir, you don't have to do that," Sarah urged, stepping forward. "You've made your point." "This isn't about making a point, Sarah," Scarlett said, his rhythmic, practiced strokes quickly clearing the hazard from the floor. "The floor is wet. Someone could slip. The job still needs to be done." He worked in silence for 2 minutes, perfectly drying the marble tiles until they gleamed under the concourse lights. He folded the yellow caution signs, placed the mop neatly in the bucket, and wheeled the cart out of the priority boarding lane. The passengers watched him, transfixed. Here was a man worth nearly $2 billion, a man who had just dismantled an arrogant hedge fund manager, fired a corrupt supervisor, and grounded a transatlantic flight attendant without raising his voice. And yet, he saw no shame in pushing a mop to ensure the safety of the people walking through his building. Scarlett turned to the young junior flight attendant, who was now standing at the podium, looking terrified. He offered her a gentle, reassuring smile. "The floor is clear, miss," Scarlett said warmly. "You may begin boarding your first-class passengers." Thank you, sir," she stammered, grabbing the microphone. "Royal Sovereign Airways would like to welcome our first-class passengers to board at this time." As the passengers began to line up, several of them stopped as they passed Scarlett. Jonathan, the software engineer, paused and extended his hand. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen." "Have a safe flight, son," Scarlett smiled, shaking the young man's hand. Sarah stood beside Scarlett as the queue moved smoothly down the jet bridge. The terminal was functioning perfectly again. The cancer of arrogance had been excised, leaving behind a healthier, more respectful ecosystem. "Are you heading up to the executive suite, Mr. Chairman?" Sarah asked. "You have a board meeting at 9 tomorrow morning." Scarlett looked down at his damp, grey uniform. He thought about his days on the tarmac in Miami, hauling luggage in the blistering heat. He thought about the thousands of invisible men and women currently working in his terminal, cleaning the restrooms, sorting the baggage, securing the perimeter. They were the true infrastructure. They were the foundation, and he would never, ever let anyone forget it. "Not yet, Sarah," Scarlett said, grabbing the handle of his mop cart. "I still have an hour left on my shift. And I believe Concourse B needs a sweep." Without another word, the billionaire janitor wheeled his cart down the massive, gleaming hallway, fading back into the beautiful invisibility of honest work. True power is not defined by the volume of your voice, the designer labels on your clothes, or how easily you can tear others down. True power is found in the foundation you build and the respect you afford to those standing on it. Scarlett Miller proved that an honest day's work is never something to look down upon, because you never know who is holding the mop or who holds the keys to the kingdom. Did this story of instant karma give you chills? If you loved seeing arrogance put in its place and hard work respected, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder to always treat service workers with kindness. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible dramatic stories. Leave a comment below. What would you have done if you were in the crowd watching this unfold? Let us know.